If you're looking for a story about a weapon that didn't work, this isn't it. This is a story about a weapon that worked exactly as promised, and still changed nothing. Every losing war reaches a moment like this. When time is running out, when resources are gone, when the system is breaking, the losing side convinces itself that one breakthrough will fix everything. One machine, one innovation, one leap so dramatic that it erases years of failure. For a moment, it feels real. The engineers believe it. The generals believe it. Even the enemy pauses. But wars don't end because something impressive appears. They end because the system behind that thing can no longer function. 1. The moment desperation looks like genius. By the final years of the war, Germany was collapsing. Not suddenly, but structurally. Fronts were bleeding manpower. Factories were starved of materials. Fuel refineries were burning faster than they could be rebuilt. Rail networks were being severed faster than they could be repaired. The war wasn't being lost in battles anymore. It was being lost in places no one filmed. Admitting that would mean admitting defeat. So instead, Germany reached for engineering. 2. A weapon that seemed to belong to the future. What emerged looked revolutionary. It flew faster than anything the Allies had. It carried weapons that could destroy heavy bombers in seconds. Pilots who encountered it reported something unnatural, attack runs they couldn't counter, speeds they couldn't match, a machine that didn't seem to obey the rules of the war they were fighting. For a brief moment, it felt like history had skipped ahead. This wasn't just a weapon. It was hope, shaped like an aircraft. Only later would it be named the Messerschmitt Me 262. 3. Why performance was never the problem. The Me 262 did what it was designed to do. It intercepted bombers. It outran enemy fighters. It won individual encounters. And none of that mattered, because by the time it entered service, the air war was no longer about encounters. It was about volume. Allied factories were producing aircraft in numbers Germany could not imagine matching, even without being bombed. The United States alone was manufacturing planes faster than Germany could train pilots. Germany built hundreds. The Allies built tens of thousands. No level of brilliance closes that gap. For the fuel trap. Jets do not forgive scarcity. They consume fuel at a rate that turns shortages into catastrophes. Germany was already immobilizing armored divisions due to fuel shortages. Training flights had been canceled. Pilots were learning in gliders. Refineries were rubble. And into this system, Germany introduced the most fuel-hungry aircraft ever deployed. Every Me 262 sortie didn't just burn fuel. It drained the entire Luftwaffe. Flying the jet meant grounding something else. 5. The time problem no technology can fix. The Me 262 demanded something Germany no longer had: time. Jet aircraft require new instincts, new training, new error margins. Germany didn't have experienced pilots to spare, and it didn't have fuel to train replacements. Inexperienced pilots were thrown into the cockpits of unstable machines. Accidents soared. Mechanical failures mounted. The most advanced fighter in the world became a danger to its own pilots. 6. When systems can no longer absorb innovation. Weapons do not exist alone. They need airfields, maintenance crews, spare parts, command stability. By 1944, Germany had none of these at scale. Airfields were bombed. Crews were exhausted. Spare parts were scavenged. Command structures were fragmenting. The Me 262 wasn't entering a war machine. It was being dropped into a collapse. 7. The real failure, misplaced priority. This is where the failure becomes irreversible. Every hour spent on jet development was an hour not spent fixing fuel supply. Every factory repurposed for jets was one not producing conventional fighters in desperately needed numbers. Germany chose brilliance over sustainability, not because it was irrational, but because it was desperate, and desperation always bets on miracles. 8. Why the Allies didn't need to defeat it. The Allies didn't beat the Me-262 by building something better. They beat it by ignoring it. They kept bombing. They kept producing. They kept replacing losses. They attacked airfields. They cratered runways. They destroyed fuel depots. They fought the system. And systems decide wars. 9. How it ended, quietly. Most Me-262s were not destroyed in combat. They were abandoned, captured, scuttled. They sat under camouflage nets, perfectly capable of flying with nothing left to support them. The future of air combat ended its war sitting still. Wars are not won by the best technology. They are won by the side that can sustain its technology, fuel its technology, integrate its technology into a coherent system, and deploy it at a scale that matters. The Me-262 was proof that brilliance without resources is just an expensive way to lose slower. It didn't fail because it was poorly designed. It failed because it arrived in a war that was already over, deployed by a military that no longer had the capacity to use it effectively, in service of a strategy that had stopped being viable years earlier. The most dangerous illusion in war is the belief that one weapon can change everything. Because that belief becomes an excuse to ignore everything else. The logistics, the sustainability, the strategic depth, the industrial base. And by the time the weapon arrives, all of those things have already decided the outcome. The Me-262 didn't lose the war for Germany. Germany had already lost. The Me-262 just made the loss more expensive. In the end, innovation without infrastructure is not a revolution. It's a distraction. And desperation disguised as genius is still just desperation.